Welcome to Biomechanics on Our Minds. My name is Melissa Boswell.
And I'm Hannah O'Day, and we're PhD students at Stanford University.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Society of Biomechanics.
It's
time for Boom.
Welcome to Boom, where we have
Biomechanics on our minds.
Boom.
Boom.
Boom, boom, boom.
We have a fun episode for you today on navigating scientific conferences.
Ooh.
So we have some hot takes from David...
Ow.
from Professors David Shiffman, Holly Bick, and Taija Finni. With Professor David Shiffman, we will be talking about the article that he wrote about tips to attend conferences, and he has some really interesting advice for that.
With Professor Holly Bick, we will be talking about the fashion side of how to dress for scientific conferences and dress professionally, and some of her tips and tricks on how to best do that and put your best foot forward. We also talk with Taija Finni about her first experiences with academic conferences, and specifically a little bit more about the International Society of Biomechanics conference that will be coming up in Calgary.
Yeah, so feel free to skip around to what you find will be the most interesting or relevant to you. Because we have so much on the schedule today, we're not going to have a bit of boom, but instead just go straight into our interviews. So on Boom, in this episode, we have a new friend on the podcast, Francesco Ortelli.
Hi.
Hi. Francesco is a PhD student in statistics at ETH Zurich, and we're really excited to have some collaboration with you between Biomechanics on Our Minds and your podcast, Dr. You.
I'm excited as well. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Joanna, for having me. I'm having a podcast about topics related to PhD studies sent from the college radio of ETH. And I'm very happy to join you for this episode about conferences and networking at conferences. We are gonna discuss some tricks and tips with David Shiffman. And I will be very, very happy to try them out at the summer school I'm attending in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're excited to see how it goes if you trying those tips and tricks out, and Hannah and I will try them out at the International Society of Biomechanics conference.
And then we'll recap our experiences on your podcast, Dr. You.
Just quickly, since your people on this podcast that are listening to this podcast might not know about you, one question that I thought was really fun that you asked on an interview was, what are the 3 emojis that describe you? And so I thought maybe that would be a fun way to just quickly get to know you.
What are your 3 emojis?
Okay, describing me or describing my podcast?
Oh, either one.
Yeah, whichever one you feel most comfortable.
Yeah, you can mix and match too.
So describing my podcast, I would say is this group emoji, because there is always a guest, and so I and the listeners get to know new people all the time, and this is really enriching, really interesting. Then I would say like the laughing emoji, because it's a lot of fun, and radio emoji, because I like a lot this audio communication. I think it's really cool, and so that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, we'll have the tips of the conference on Biomechanics on Our Mind, and then we're going to have a follow-up on Dr. You, Francesco's podcast, that will be released shortly after the conference.
Exactly. And I will be very, very happy to discuss with you how it went in trying out these tips and tricks at the International Society of Biomechanics conference that we're going to have at the beginning of August, right?
Yes.
Right.
And at the summer school, I'm going to have in 2 weeks. I'm very excited and very stressed. So
Don't be stressed. Don't worry. It'll be lots of fun.
I hope so. Let's see how it's going to go.
Now you have the tips for success.
So now the three of us are going to interview David Shiffman from Simon Fraser University on some tips on navigating conferences and advice for students attending.
Very interesting. Listen carefully.
All right, so today we're going to talk with David Shiffman, who has a PhD in ecosystem science and policy. He is an interdisciplinary marine conservation biologist, and his research focuses on the ecology and conservation of sharks and rays.
But today we're going to be talking about navigating conferences with David. So thank you for talking with us about this topic today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Do you remember your first conference?
I have been to so many now. During graduate school, I attended 37 conferences, which is unusually high, but it does mean I have a lot of tips and tricks to share. I believe the first conference I attended was the American Elasmobranch Society conference in Portland, Oregon, and that's an annual conference for one of my professional societies, a society focusing on the science and management of sharks and rays. And it rotates locations. I've since become a member of the board for that meeting. But that was a great first meeting to have because many scientific conferences are sort of overwhelming and not particularly welcoming to newcomers. And AES is generally the opposite of that. It's very student-friendly. It's very newcomer-friendly. And I really felt welcomed and like I was a part of the group.
That's great.
So how came that you decided to go to your first conference?
I had long been convinced of the value of scientific conferences, and I am Mr. Internet. I use social media tools for just about everything. But I don't think that telepresence will ever replace the need for in-person meetings of a large group of colleagues. And I had asked around, and I had heard that this was a good one to attend. I was at the time the only person in my master's program studying sharks and rays. So I could get a lot of great feedback on statistics and making figures and how to publish papers from my colleagues. But when it came to the specific study organism and study system that I worked in, I really needed to branch out to find a broader group of, or another independent group of scientists. So this was a conference that was recommended to me. And I have been back every year since, and I'm going to this year's in a couple of weeks, which will be in Snowbird, Utah.
Oh, wow.
So basically, we can say for networking and for getting feedback on your research.
Yes, absolutely. Scientific conferences are valuable for professional networking. They're especially if you are interested in pursuing a different level of graduate school or a faculty position or a postdoc later in your career. But also even just to know who the other people in your field are if you have a specific technical question or something. Getting feedback on your own research is incredibly valuable. Getting to see what everyone else is up to is incredibly valuable and can give you a lot of good ideas for your own research, which may even involve collaborating with the people that you meet at conferences.
What are some ways that you get feedback on your research at conferences?
So typically you give a talk or a poster discussion, and you present your research, and there's time for questions and answers after. And typically, if someone has a major concern about your research, unless they're a huge jerk, they won't ask that in front of the whole auditorium of people. They'll approach you later. But sometimes you will get suggestions in the question and answer period in the form of, this is really interesting. Have you considered taking this approach to it? And I found those sorts of questions to be incredibly valuable for my own research. And also when people approach me later at the pub that night and say, hey, I want to ask this in front of everyone, but you should maybe consider doing this instead of that. And I almost always say, wow, what a great idea. Thank you. And usually I even mean it.
Usually, yeah. That's awesome.
Like, so in preparing for all of these different conferences, are there certain strategies you use, or like, I mean, aside from maybe preparing your talk, Are there other things you do to get ready for the conference?
Absolutely. To make the most out of a conference, it is really, really important that you look over the schedule in advance. and find the things that are most critical that you definitely want to be sure to attend, because you can't do everything. It's not possible. There are limits to what the human body can tolerate, and you can only see through so many dozen PowerPoint talks in a week-long period. So, at some of the larger conferences, there are what are called concurrent sessions, which means in a given time slot in 5 or 10 or 20 rooms, there are 5 or 10 or 20 different talks happening. So you want to make sure that you identify the ones that you absolutely can't miss, the people you definitely want to get a chance to talk to, and plan out in advance. If you are just wake up in the morning right before the day's events are supposed to start, especially if you've been out celebrating the night before, you may feel you're a little overwhelmed and later go, oh my God, there was one talk in this whole conference that was the most critical for me to attend, and I missed it because I wasn't paying attention to the schedule. That's no good.
Right.
Right.
So do you ever have a problem where you want to attend multiple sessions at one time? And do you have any suggestions for what to do in those situations?
That definitely happens. And ideally, if your research interests fall into a sort of typical stream, then you would not find concurrent sessions of different talks within that stream, because lots of other people would want to also attend both of those talks. But if you're like me and you have weird interdisciplinary interests, then you're the only one who cares about both those topics, and they're not scheduling around you. When that happens, something that you can do, if you really just can't pick between two that are at the same time, they both sound so critical, they both sound so interesting, then one thing you can do is see which of the people, if any of them, you know better, and reach out to them in advance and say, hey, I really want to attend your talk, but this other talk that I absolutely have to see is happening at the same time. Is there any chance I could buy you a beer or coffee or something later and you could summarize your results for me? And I've done that a lot of times.
Yeah. Do you ever go between sessions to try to? Okay.
Yeah. So institutional norms vary on this between disciplines. But in my world of marine biology, fisheries management, conservation policy, it's considered pretty normal to do that. So if the morning session is, let's say, 9:30 to 11 a.m. and there's talks every 15 minutes, it's totally fine to go to a talk in room A from 9:30 to 9:45 and a talk in room C from 9:45 to 10. People do it all the time. As soon as someone says thank you right before their question and answer period starts, just sort of make a quick exit for the door. A good thing to do is to sit on an aisle so you don't have to disrupt people if you know you're going to be moving in and around. And a good thing to do is to don't do that while someone's talking. As I said, someone will give their talk, they'll say, thank you, do you have any questions? At the thank you, do you have any questions? That's a great time to move. But when someone is saying, and the most important part of my conclusion is that's inevitably when you'll knock over a chair and make a motion or something. So yeah, planning ahead with this stuff. And some conference centers are massive, so much so that you absolutely cannot get from room A to room C in a minute. So you may need to make sure to get to a talk early. You don't want to be stumbling into a room out of breath when a talk is halfway done.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to go back on when you said meeting up with somebody or asking if somebody would meet up for coffee to talk about their work with you. Do you do this, like, let's say there's somebody who's giving a talk that you're super interested in, but you just want to meet with them and talk, but you don't know them very well. Is there a best approach for asking them if they would talk with you further?
That's a great question. And the one-on-one conversations that you can have, even if they're just for 5 or 10 minutes in a coffee break session, are one of the most valuable parts of a conference. And the best way to ensure that you get to do that with the people that you want to be sure to talk to is to look over the schedule in advance, identify ideally no more than 3 or 4 or 5 people for whom that's the case, and reach out to them in advance via email and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm a graduate student studying this. I see we're both going to be at this conference. I was hoping I could meet you for a few minutes for coffee or something. And most people will say, sure, let's find a time. I'm busy Thursday afternoon, but any other day works for me. You can also just sort of approach them in a coffee break. In a coffee break or at a social or just hang out in the hallway before things start. You'll see people and you can go up to them and say like, hey, I saw your talk yesterday. It was really interesting. I had a couple questions. Do you have a minute? Probably the person that you most desperately want to do that with will be someone who is always surrounded by a gaggle of admirers or former students or whatever. You'll never get a chance to talk to them. So reaching out in advance can be really helpful for those reasons. And there's a move you'll see at conferences if someone is talking to someone else and you want to indicate to them, I am interested in talking to you, but it's not an emergency and I don't want to disrupt it. I don't want to disrupt what you're doing now. You stand sort of like a step and a half back from them. And you'll see this in action, and it indicates to anyone who is not totally clueless, I'm next. I would like to speak to you, but do no rush, do whatever you need now. And
Right.
that's hard. It's very awkward to do that.
Yeah.
If you don't, then you'll never get a chance to talk with some of the people.
That's good to say too, so that people, when they are in a conversation with somebody who's very well known and see someone doing that, hopefully they will have some awareness to kind of, share the time.
Yes, they should, and they somebody inevitably won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I wanted to connect to the article David wrote.
Yeah.
Because so in this article you wrote on Southern Fried Science.
Yes.
You gave 10 tips for graduate students, or let's say applicable also to fresh PhD students, as I am, for instance, to get the most out of this first scientific conference. And so many of them relate to like skills that have to do with networking, right?
Yes.
For instance, what you were mentioning now, not being afraid to approach famous people or important people at this conference.
Yes, that's really important. They go to these conferences because they want to see what the next generation of scientists is up to. They want to meet you. And here's something that hopefully is not too shocking for scientists or for scientists. The most important scientists in the world are actually not that important. They're not celebrities. They're not, and they don't need to have this attitude of, oh, I'm too busy to talk with a student. And most of them don't. So you can usually, every once in a while, there's a jerk in your field. Most people, they absolutely are approachable or amenable to meeting with students and are very approachable. And the presidents of the Elasmobranch Society have a history of attending the student-only social for a bit to make sure that the students get time to speak with the leadership of the society. There's a lot of people who do things like that. So don't be afraid to approach like, oh my God, there's a person here at this conference who's the biggest name in my field, and I owned a book by them when I was 5, and I'm so glad to meet them. If you don't go meet them, you're not getting the most out of the conference.
Do you have other advice for a good networking activity at a conference? So
it's really, really, really important that you have your so-called elevator pitch down, or elevator speech. That if anyone is unfamiliar with this, the premise of this is you're at the hotel at your convention center, you're on the 10th floor, you're going down to the lobby, and at the 9th floor, this really, really famous person in your field gets on the elevator and says, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so, what do you do? And you have until the elevator gets to the lobby to talk to this person and impress them and make an important professional connection before the lobby opens and you might never see that person again in your life. So basically that means you should be able to summarize your research in a sentence, 15, 20 seconds. And that takes practice. Even reading your conference abstract will probably take 2.5 minutes. So you need a sentence. And it's really hard to do that. But even you can just say general methods. I'm interested in this subject. I work with so-and-so at this university. Let them ask for more information. When someone says, what do you do? They don't want to see a 10-minute thesis defense. They want to have a conversation. And you're going to have to answer that question. So who are you? What do you do? Where are you? You're going to have to answer that question 1,000 times. So if you can do it efficiently, it will be easier for everyone, including you.
Can we have an example of your 10-second elevator
Sure. Hi, I'm David. I'm based at Simon Fraser University. I study how fishermen perceptions of fisheries rules affecting sharks.
All right, that's great.
That was awesome. I want to learn. I want to know how you do that.
So the key to any of this stuff is practice. And the first time you do it, it's not going to work. There's no one who's just naturally gifted at this. There are some people who are better or worse than it than others, but it's something that you learn how to do and you practice. And if you just Google how to write an elevator pitch, there are lots of basic tips on there. But basically, you're not at this point mentioning your key results. You're not mentioning at this point why you care about this. You're not mentioning at this point 6 or 7 caveats about interpreting your results. You're saying, this is the method I use. This is where I'm based. This is the general 1-sentence question I'm interested in. And people, if they're really interested in talking about more about that, they'll tell you. And if they're just there to make sure that the student who they've never seen before and is obviously a newcomer at the conference feels welcome, they probably don't care that much about what you do. They just want to make sure that someone's talking to you and that you get a chance to meet senior people. And that should not be taken as an insult.
Yeah, that's really important.
So I think I don't have an elevator speech, but I think I'm going to prepare one for the summer school I'm attending next week. And I'll try out and let you know how it went.
Good luck. Yeah, please let me know. You will find that there is inevitably someone in your social group, if you go with a whole lab or a whole department to a conference, who is extremely bad at this. And once you get good at it, it can be somewhat painful to watch someone flailing to answer a basic question like, so what do you do? And they start launching into their master's thesis defense talk. So once you learn these things, when it's your first conference, focus on you making the most of it. When it's your second or third or 38th conference, as the case may be for me, focus on making sure the other people around you can benefit from your experience. So something that goes viral all the time on social media is, in academia, everyone is smart. You can distinguish yourself by being kind. And one thing I do at conferences now is I don't do this all the time because I go to conferences because I need to catch up with colleagues too. But at the opening social or something, I'll look around the room and see who looks like they don't know anybody and go invite them over to a group that I'm talking with. Or I'll look around the room and say, I've never seen that person before and I've been to the last 10 of these conferences. They must be new. And we'll go and introduce myself to them. And a lot of people more senior than me also do some version of that. But there are also times when I need to be talking with colleagues about a somewhat in-depth professional technical matter. And I've had people approach me during those times that they just want to talk, or they just wanted to meet me, and they seem upset when I say, "Can we meet later? I'm in the middle of something." So
not taking that personally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are people who are genuinely jerks. There are people who are genuinely jerks to you and not to other people. But most people are there to do the right thing, to make themselves available for students. It's mostly a positive experience. There will always be some jerks. Another thing for students in particular, particularly for young women students, you should see if the conference you're attending has a code of conduct. A code of conduct governs appropriate behavior, particularly but not exclusively with respect to sexual harassment of senior academics towards grad students who don't look like they don't know anyone yet. This is a major problem in some fields, including mine. So make sure that you know what the rules are and make sure you know who to go to if you feel uncomfortable or unsafe. And I wish I didn't have to say that, but it's lately a more and more important thing to consider. And many conferences are developing codes of conduct. Some don't have them yet. And if your conference doesn't have a code of conduct, it's worth asking why at the membership meeting.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and we really appreciate you bringing that up to talk about. I don't know that we would have thought about it otherwise. So,
I haven't seen that tip. Like Melissa's kind of compiled a lot of different tips from people about attending conferences, and I don't think that one's come up yet. So thank you for sharing that.
There are, unfortunately, bad people, bad actors in our world. And one of the things that people who are serial bad actors are very, very, very good at doing is identifying people who would be good targets. Look like they don't know anyone, who look lost, who look overwhelmed, who perhaps won't be aware of what the rules are and who to go to if they feel unsafe. So ideally, no one will be targeted by anything like that because it'll be a safe and respectful and responsible and professional environment. But you don't want to be the target.
Right. Maybe on shift, like a little bit more positive note, one of your tips from the article was not eating alone. And I think not that it plays into this, but like, I guess, do you just want to explain that tip a little more and what you mean specifically, like, or how you should combat that by not eating?
Yeah. So the not eating alone is more of a networking tip than a safety tip. But it could really be true. But basically, a lot of work at these meetings, a lot of the networking and a lot of the fun happens at lunch or at dinner. And if you don't know that many people yet, and your plan is, oh, I'll just make, this city is expensive, I'll just go make peanut butter sandwiches in my hotel room, you're missing out on a major part of the networking opportunities. I've written or co-written 3 papers in bars at conferences. So if a group of people is indeed going to a place that is out of your budget, you genuinely cannot afford to do that, and you should not be going into debt of any kind to attend these conferences. Then you can still go just to chat with them and maybe get us an appetizer or a side, and then go home and eat a peanut butter sandwich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but just being there is all the
so much important conversation happens at these meals, and you will see that right before the lunch break or right before the dinner break or whatever, sort of amalgamations of people gathering that are clearly going off to do things. And if you genuinely don't know anyone at these meetings, pick one at random and say, hey, I don't really know anyone here. Do you mind if I join you guys for a meal? And they might say, actually, we're a working group for a particular project and our conversation is confidential. That's fine. That's not an insult. Or they might say, yeah, sure, join us. I made a lot of good friends doing that. And I also, when I'm going out with a group of friends, if I see someone who looks like they don't know anyone, I'll invite them to tag along. This gets out of hand very quickly. Most restaurants cannot deal with a group of 30 people who all want separate checks and all want their food and in and out in an hour. But it can be a really great way to do things. Something to be aware of is a lot of senior academics, or just generally who have financial security of some degree in general, they'll just say, oh, we don't need the individual checks. We'll just split the check. But like they got the lobster and filet mignon and you got a side salad. One thing you can do in that situation is carry cash with you. And before the bill is settled, you can say, hey, I just got the side salad. Here's $10. I got to run to make another meeting. It was so nice to meet you. Which is sneaky, but it works. Don't skip out on the check, though there will be some people that will offer grad students food. Usually we'll buy grad students a beer or something. But you can't count on that. University lab should ideally be would you some stipend for food. Or not, just be careful. But I would say if you are avoiding going out for meals for budget reasons, you're missing out on huge professional networking opportunities, and you can always eat a peanut butter sandwich later and just go and sit and talk with people at lunch.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is there any other advice that you would like to add about conferences, or anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, just with conferences, preparation is key, and it should be fun. It should not be scary. And I know I'm a huge extrovert and not everyone is, but if it's scary, if it's genuinely causing you medical levels of anxiety that's harming you, you're doing something wrong, or your supervisor is doing something wrong. It should not be so stressful that it causes physical reactions. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to sit out an afternoon session and go take a nap or go for a walk. It's, literally no one attends every single session. It's not possible. The human body has limits to its endurance. I find I can do attending every session and going out at night with people to celebrate. I used to be able to do that for about 5 days, and now I can do it for about 3 days before I just need a break. And the key is planning that break in such a way that you're not missing your best friend giving a talk, or your boss giving a talk, or your lab mate giving a talk, or the talk that's most relevant to your professional interest. So that's just planning.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all these tips. And if people have questions, or people listening want to find you or follow your work, we just wanted to share. Can we share your Twitter handle?
Absolutely. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's the same for everything. Why Sharks Matter, all one word. I'm always happy to answer any questions that anyone has about sharks, or any questions that anyone has about surviving graduate school.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the great advice.
Yeah, I'll try.
Good luck. Have fun out there.
Oh, thank you. So right now we are talking with Dr. Holly Bick, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Nematology at the University of California, Riverside. She obtained her PhD in molecular biology at the University of Southampton in the UK. Thank you for talking with us, Holly.
Thanks for having me.
So we found Holly from a really interesting blog post. So your blog post was called Dressing for Interviews, Finding Your Style, and Why You Need to Think About Your Clothes. And we thought this is kind of an older blog post, I think from 2013. We found it super interesting, especially because I think a lot of times in science and scientific conferences, you don't always put as much thought into what we're wearing. But I was kind of wondering what inspired you to write this blog post, and kind of some of the important things that you find in how you dress for a scientific conference.
Yeah, I guess, so I love fashion, I guess I would say that off the top. But, science generally as a discipline is not the most fashion forward. If you go to conferences, people don't necessarily put on business attire even. It's very casual. So I was trying to find a way to really merge my own personal style with something that's kind of professionally appropriate. So, I mean, in an ideal world, I guess I would dress like Lady Gaga, but I don't think I could give a talk like that. So, trying to find clothes that I'm happy with, that make me feel great and give me confidence, but are also professionally appropriate for scientific settings and don't put off, senior scientists, because there are power hierarchies in science, and we all know about gender bias issues and the challenges that women face in science. So, trying to strike a balance between something that you're happy with, but it is also appropriate for that professional sphere. So I guess I've just thought a lot about this over the years. And thankfully, I think since 2013, things have gotten a lot easier in terms of fashion, because there's all of these startup companies and online resources now that you can use that definitely didn't exist back in 2013, to the point where you can really experiment with things at home and, find styles that work for you and try different things before you even have to go to a conference. And for me, it's less mentally stressful too than going, to the mall or to stores for 5 hours at a time. So nowadays I use subscription services like Stitch Fix and Rent the Runway, either buying clothes or renting clothes. And that's mainly where I get most of my professional fashion and work outfits from.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that expensive looking clothes can be affordable. And I was wondering if you have any tips for that, for how to still look really nice, but maybe, as grad students, we don't really have the budget for really nice clothing. So I was wondering if you had any advice about that.
Yeah, for sure. So what I would recommend is I would try to find a brand that you like the style of and that really fits your body. And, brands tend to have different price points, and oftentimes they're available at a certain location. So for a while I was shopping at Nordstrom Rack, because they tend to have higher quality brands, but they are discounted or they're affordable. And I tend to go with things like clothes texture, or, if you buy a piece of clothing from a brand and you wash it twice and it falls apart, then it's probably not worth it to invest. So I used to shop at H&M, I would say, during grad school. And just over time, I was just really unhappy with the quality of the clothes because it's cheap, but then you wash it once and the color fades or it falls apart, and you're pumping it. If you buy like 5 outfits for $10, that's $50 that you spend on fashion that's going to fall apart at H&M. So I would say invest in fewer, higher quality pieces. So maybe spend $50 on a really nice pair of pants or a nice dress, something that is, you can dress up or dress down. So I would say versatility is also good. And a lot of the higher end pieces, especially if you stick with more classic styles, you can wear them to like a conference dinner, or you can dress them down and wear them out to the bar on the weekends. So think about price point and quality, and then versatility.
That's a really good point about dressing up and dressing down. I liked your little segment on using accessories to do that. And I think that, I should preface that I feel like I'm not a fashionable person, and I am not someone who loves to shop and try things out. But so maybe for some of our listeners who want to get sort of a lot of mileage out of an outfit, maybe you want to talk about how you can do that and maybe how accessories can help with that.
Yeah, I would also say I hate shopping with a passion. So I think it's a common misconception. If you like fashion, you like shopping. No, I avoid stores like the plague. Amazon gets all my money. And I guess that's why I really love these subscription services, because I can just order a box, and then on the weekend when I have time, I can, have 4 or 5 accessories. So the great thing about some of these subscription services, or even just online shopping in general, I have made full use of returning things. And I think with the transition to e-commerce, most stores nowadays will offer free return shipping on things. So oftentimes for accessories, especially, I'll overbuy. So I might buy 5 to 7 necklaces and try them all on, and then maybe keep like 2 or 3 and return the rest. And because you never know what things are going to look like on your body, and sometimes you don't know the quality of things that you get online. So for people that are maybe unsure about what their style is, or how something is going to look, make full use of the return window and don't feel bad about it, because that's what it's there for, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And maybe just to be conscious of even just like male listeners that might, I don't know if that's I'm not trying to make any assumptions about people's preferences, but I tend to think that there's might be different tips for different genders or different styles of what you're looking for. Do you have any comments there, or do you think all the same things apply?
I would say most of the same things apply, and a lot of these services. Some are biased towards women's clothes, but the Stitch Fix does have mailboxes, so you can order and try on different styles too. And I think there might be specific services for men's fashion too. So I find that online options are a lot more diverse and a lot more versatile than going into a store, especially in terms of sizing. And not everyone wants feminine, dressy, flower type things. So your own personal style is going to vary too. And I think there's different websites, and I think that's why the advice to kind of find a brand that you really like, because personally I find that if I end up finding a brand that fits and works for me, I end up just buying all of their stuff, and until they change their corporate strategy and change the sizing and the quality, I have to go find another brand. And I think that's true for men's fashion too. My husband actually does the same thing, because I've helped him try to find his conference fashion. He's a scientist, and we found a couple brands that really work well on him and really fit for him. It took a while, because I think men's fashion is just really hard, especially in the US. It's easier actually in Europe, because there's more of there's more options like H&M and Topshop, and a little bit more fashionable options if you're that kind of if you're a male that likes that kind of fashion. So it's a little bit harder in the US, and some of the sizings are difficult for certain body types, but there's definitely options online for whatever your style is.
That's awesome. It seems like you're really involved in like science communication and social media. And as we're going into the upcoming conference, just to change the topic a little bit, I was wondering your thoughts on how important it is to be active and engaged in social media as a scientist.
Right. So this is always a tough question because people have really polarized opinions on social media. I like it because it fits my personality, and I'm an extrovert and I enjoy the online conversations, and it's kind of like just a cocktail party all the time online, and you can always chat to people. Um, it's a really good way to stay in touch with colleagues and collaborators too, and kind of see what they're up to. But I know that for some people it's overwhelming and it might not necessarily fit with their own preferences or their personality. So I would say you don't have to use social media, but personally I have reaped a lot of professional benefits from it. I really enjoy it. I feel like I've expanded my scientific network. And for conferences in particular, I feel it's really good because oftentimes I'll look through the conference hashtag and I'll see who's going to be at an upcoming conference. Oftentimes there's a collaborator or colleague I haven't seen in a while that we're going to be at the conference at the same time. And, so then I can email them and we can set up dinner or a coffee and just catch up. So that's a really nice way to just keep track of people without bugging them. And then also trying to reach out to new people that maybe there's someone you've always wanted to meet and they're going to be at a conference. So social media is a really great way to serve as an icebreaker because no one likes networking and it's always awkward. And especially if you're earlier in your career, there's that power dynamic and can be super intimidating to go up to, someone more senior and try to talk science. So social media is a great icebreaker because I feel like you have a conversation online beforehand and you can kind of gauge people's sense of humor and personality a little bit through that channel. So, and then, if you're at the conference, you can kind of keep track of what's going on. Maybe there's a mixer or people are going out to dinner and you can kind of keep track of your social calendar, I guess, at a conference if you just look at the social media feeds. But, it's an option. You can do things the old way of in person at conferences and you can always email people. So it's not required, but I think it's definitely complementary and it enhances the conference experience for the better.
Awesome. Do you have any other conference tips that you would like to share?
I am a planner, so I always go through the conference book in depth beforehand. Usually if I get to the conference a night before and then I register right away and I just go through the book and highlight everything. I don't know if everyone does that, but that's what I do because I don't like missing anything. So I just try to sketch out my schedule and also sketch out break times too, because I feel like some of these bigger conferences get pretty overwhelming. So if there's an afternoon where you're not super interested in any of the talks or the events, just block that off as a guilt-free time to go explore the city, or I'll go try to find a yoga class or something locally in the conference city, and just don't feel bad about not going to the conference for part of it because they're pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, those are really good tips because I feel like you can only handle so many talks or posters or whatever in one day.
Oh yeah, and your brain just starts melting after a certain amount of information.
Yeah.
And just curious, what conference is upcoming that you're going to?
The International Society of Biomechanics.
Oh, okay. So is that people that build cool robots and
Sometimes,
no?
Some of us, yeah.
A lot of studying human movement and injuries. So there's like sports biomechanics. So there's also like musculoskeletal diseases like osteoarthritis, and Hannah studies Parkinson's. So there's a wide variety of things.
Wow, that sounds really interesting, especially for such an interdisciplinary conference of just all these different things and disease biology and disease mechanics. I guess I never thought of that as something that people study.
Yeah, and like even just like mobile health and like how like we track people's movement and health on like large scales, I think is another crazy field that's part of biomechanics that I didn't know existed even.
Oh, cool. I was thinking of those Boston Dynamics robots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that conference is actually a little bit earlier this year, and they were also in, I think, Calgary or Canmore or something like that. But that exists too. Yeah. So, and your post was really awesome, and I feel like dressing for a conference is a topic that you kind of feel like ugh about. It's like, ugh, I have to wear uncomfortable clothes or blah blah blah. But I feel like your post made it really fun and exciting, and made it more about like the process of actually finding what works for you. So I really liked that.
And I think if you find your style and you find clothes that you really like, it won't feel like a chore. It'll be like you'll wake up and you'll open your closet and you'll be so excited about what do I get to wear today?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Have you ever seen the show? What was it called? What Not to Wear? I know it's off the air now,
yes,
but
Stacy.
yeah, Stacey and Clinton. I know. That show is actually awesome for people that don't really know their style. I actually learn a lot from that show because they are so good, especially with accessories. I mean, the things that they do to people just to kind of make an outfit. And also, I know we're kind of like, we're finishing up, but I'm thinking more things. A good haircut is actually really important too. And so, if you can change your clothes, but if you're just going to supercuts and sort of getting your hair trimmed every 2 years, then, it might not like work with the clothes. And I always think that on the What Not to Wear show, when they do their hair and their makeup, it just completely changes the way they look.
That's so true.
That is so true.
I have a hairstylist who, like, after she's just like, you have to go on a date tonight. Like, and she just like builds me up, and I'm like, I don't even know if this looks good, but you make me feel good.
Yeah, and finding the right hairstylist too is really difficult too, because you don't know how bad some of them are until you find a really, really good one.
Yes, it's so true.
Going from I was going to like Great Clips, and then I went to somebody really nice. I had like a Groupon, and he was like, "Who did this to your hair?" And I was like, "I didn't know it was that bad."
Oh yeah, no, Great Clips. I got my bangs cut there once, and they were probably the worst bangs I've ever had because they were uneven, and I was just trying. Like, I had no time, and I just needed them cut. And then it was like I should have just waited and gone to a proper salon. And I know this was cheap, but was it really?
Was it worth it? Yeah. I like that comment about clothing. Like, it doesn't, nice clothing doesn't have to be expensive, and like, don't just go for something because it's cheap. It will end up falling apart on you. Yeah.
And you can actually go for pretty long without a haircut. I mean, I just changed stylists a couple months ago, and now she basically doesn't want me to get my hair cut any sooner than 3 months because she's trying to do like a layering thing and grow it out. So I was just always, I have to get my hair cut every 6 weeks, but I guess that's not the case. And if you get a cut that can grow out, or you're trying to grow out your hair, you can actually save money by just not going to the hairdresser as often.
There's some great advice and things that are challenging to talk about sometimes, even though it doesn't seem like it would be, but it can be. And I think that a lot of times we don't get advice on what to wear. So we really appreciate it.
No, and I think there's a lot of resources for how to present your research and make a poster. But I think that we don't talk about things like conference fashion that everyone thinks about and everyone struggles with. So
that's so true.
Thank you for topic and having a podcast to just discuss it, because I think it's a really useful resource. My one last piece of advice is, when you're packing for conferences, it is always good to have a base color in mind. So that by base, I mean like black or white or brown are generally my 3 options. Usually I go with black because it's easy and it hides the dirt. So I basically plan my conference outfits around kind of a neutral color palette, and that's everything from accessories to shoes. And if you're using kind of a black color scheme, then you really only need 1 or 2 pairs of shoes for the whole conference, and maybe a couple undershirts, and then a couple accessories, and then you can swap things out. But it makes it a whole lot less overwhelming if you just kind of have a base color scheme that you're packing against.
Yeah, that's great. That's
actually
really great tip.
Sorry, I'll share one last thing that I was once at our departmental conference here at school, and I was drinking hot cocoa and I somehow choked on it. It was too hot or something. And I ended up kind of spinning it out onto one of the professors in our department. And she was so chill and she just like wiped it off. And she's like, this is why I always wear black. So you're just saying like that it hides the dirt. It also hides if people spill things on you or you spill things on yourself. So,
Yeah, I've done the opposite and worn white and spilled coffee all over myself. So it's not an ideal scenario, but yeah, I guess like pack some of those Tide sticks so that in case anything drastic happens, you can at least try to get the coffee stains out.
Much safer.
Right. If people want to follow your work or hear more from you, where might they be able to do that? I think you're on Twitter, or if you'd be willing to share that with us.
Oh, yeah, of course. I think Twitter is probably the easiest, so I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. On Twitter, my handle is @HollyBick, HOLLYBIK. And if anyone wants an updated blog post or any additional information that we didn't talk about on the podcast, I'm always happy to chat further online.
That's awesome. Thank you.
No worries.
Hello, Boom. We're here with Dr. Taija Finni, who is Professor of Kinesiology and Faculty of Sport and Health Sciences at the Neuromuscular Research Center at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland.
Taija is also the Education Officer of the International Society of Biomechanics. Thanks for talking with us, Taija.
Hi, it's good to talk to you.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about conferences. You just mentioned that you just got back from quite a number of conferences, but we actually wanted to ask if you remember your first conference.
Yes, I do remember. It was 1997, European College of Sport Science in Copenhagen in Denmark, after which, directly through Helsinki, we flew to ISB in Tokyo, 1997. So I particularly remember very well the Tokyo ISB.
Oh, cool.
I didn't know that ISB had ever been held in Tokyo. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you have any particular memories about the conference, whether you liked it, were you intimidated, anything?
I remember I presented data from my master thesis, and there were all these big names in the audience. I specifically remember meeting Reggie Edgerton there at the first time, and I did my postdoc later on with him. And then I remember meeting Rick Lieber there. He gave me his card and asked me to send some information about the optic fiber technique that we were using to measure tender muscular forces.
Oh, cool.
So the highlights, what I remember. After being 1 week in Tokyo where you don't understand anything, and then we made a short trip to Yokohama where there was a Hard Rock Cafe, and that was a Western style food. And so I just cried. It was so exhausting week. So I was just so relieved that, to get something familiar after the, tough week.
Yeah, I bet.
Wow, what an experience. I feel like, so do you feel like, hopefully you don't feel like crying right now after your conferences that you've just done at. So it seems like you've probably evolved since that first conference. Do you have any tips and tricks on how best to sort of prepare for conferences, and what do you think has, I'm sure a lot has changed since that first one, but anything salient that you want to share?
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty intensely involved in conferences where I go to. I haven't been really into the Congress tourism so much, but I'm quite much at the on-site, listening to talks and talking to people. So it's quite intense week. That way you can get lots of the conferences, but it can be quite exhaustive as well. So depending on what type of person you are, you may also want to be slightly more relaxed and not plan so heavy schedule. But it's good to plan ahead. What I typically do is I do some program building for myself with the tools available for the many Congress organizers. Have these tools available just to choose few options, maybe if not the best one is found, and then also play by the ear if you meet some interesting people and they tip you on that is a very good speaker. I can change my plans as well.
Yeah, that's great. What about tips and tricks on how to prepare for presentations?
Well, the key thing is to prepare and practice your presentation, and maybe have a try out with your colleagues or supervisors or friends who can give you some feedback and tips on what to improve and how to say things that they are understandable and clear and concisely said.
Right. Yeah, that's great. What about like quick, like, I don't know, like when the hour or the half hour before your presentation, do you, are you still typically busy doing things, or do you do it, like go somewhere quiet to kind of prepare?
Well, I can be nervous the whole week before a presentation. For example, in Calgary ISB, I will have 3 talks, and
Wow.
I'm sure I will be nervous the whole week before those ones. But it's just, healthy excitement. As long as you are well prepared and you know what to say and what the important message is you want to convey to the audience, then you'll be fine, even though you are maybe a bit nervous.
So, kind of switching gears a little bit to talking about conversation actually at the conferences. There was a Stanford study that found that not only are women underrepresented at scientific meetings, but they actually participate less than men in question and answer sections, and they sort of self-limit their involvement and participation. So you mentioned that you actually actively try to see a lot of different people and talk. But what do you have any thoughts on this finding, or do you feel that you've observed this in yourself or in others at scientific meetings?
Yeah, I can relate to the result. It may be quite intimidating to answer or ask questions in front of the big audience or comment some points of the presentations, but coffee breaks and breaks in schedule, it's much more easier to approach the speakers and ask questions. But certainly I would encourage discussion in the room because that can bring out so much more of the research that was presented as well, and stimulate scientific debate. So women should also be engaged to the, including me, more than I typically do.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. So we had some students that they had questions on just kind of knowing the basics and what to expect and what's expected of a student attending a conference. And so I was kind of wondering your thoughts on what's expected of a student that's attending ISB.
Well, certainly not just to present your own work, but to learn from others as well. And because many people are presenting their science that is not yet available in print or in Twitter, provides you sort of the first-hand information about future research. So it's very important to participate and actually go to congresses to hear new and get new ideas where the science is going next.
Yeah. Do you find that you do a lot of like sort of networking with people at conferences, and do you have any tips on maybe what to do and maybe what not to do in your experience with networking with people?
typically scientists are easy to be approached. I have not had any bad experiences in approaching, unknown scientists to ask questions. Coffee breaks are very good place to just go and approach people and make acquaintances. Well, introduce yourself and appropriate to ask. So then what are you doing? What kind of research are you doing if you don't know the person? That's what I quite often do.
Yeah, that's definitely like the sort of hallmark of going and actually being present so that you can not only share but also learn. I think you've conveyed that really well in our conversation here.
Yeah, I just had one more question about you posted. So from your last conferences, you've been posting on Twitter a bit about the conferences, and in one of the tweets, you mentioned from ISMPB or what is this? I Cam Pam. I don't know.
I can pan. Yes, it's a physical activity conference. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. You say awesome new friends, great science, and warm atmosphere. And I was wondering if you could explain maybe what kind of contributed to this warm atmosphere and maybe how we might be able to like cultivate something like that at ISB.
A tough one, but I think it just comes sort of naturally when people have curiosity about others and others' work. And if you meet somebody who's excited about, research in the topic that you are, you can just go on and talk and create new ideas. That's a friendly atmosphere, and also, so in a sessions, a friendly atmosphere can come from encouraging comments or even critical comments that are given in a positive way, because in some sort of hardcore science conferences or medical conferences, people can give quite nasty comments, and that's not, it's not building building trust and confidence. So you have to balance your comments and try to be give your comments if they are critique in a positive and constructive way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you have any time that you remember getting a comment that was like particularly negative or not, just not very positive, and how you handled that situation?
Now I don't remember really bad comments. Maybe just that I forgot all the bad things and remember just the good things.
Oh,
That's good. Yeah,
I need
that's
to do
awesome.
a better job of that.
Cool. Well, I think that's really awesome that you've had positive experiences. It's probably speaks to a little bit of who you are as well. It sounds like you're very open to learning from others and focusing on the positive things. So I think those are really great things to come away with from our conversation too.
Yeah. Is there anything about the International Society of Biomechanics conferences that you feel is like different than other conferences?
Well, ISB family is sort of a tradition. I've grown to ISB through my supervisor, Paavo Komi. So he brought us to conferences, like the 97 conference was the first one. Of course, I haven't attended all of them since, but very often. I consider that like my scientific home. So I go to other conferences as well, where you can broaden your perspectives to various fields. But still, I consider ISB sort of my scientific home.
Oh,
That's really sweet.
yeah, that's really awesome. It'll be my first ISB and Melissa's second.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're very new to family.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the one thing I always have really liked about the ISB family is that everyone has been really welcoming, and it is a really wonderful community to be a part of.
Yes, I hope and new people will join and realize that it's worth investing and contributing to the society as well.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for chatting with us today. And in case people have any other questions for you or just want to follow you, is there a good social media place like Twitter, your Twitter handle that they can add you?
Yes, I am at Twitter, Taija Finni, spelled together.
Okay, Taija Finni. Okay, all together. Great. Great. We're gonna follow you too. So and Boom will follow you now that Boom has Twitter.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking with us. We really appreciate your tips and advice and learning from your experiences.
Thank you, and see you in Calgary.
Yeah, it will be so exciting.
Can't wait.
So, with all of those awesome tips and tricks that we've learned for navigating scientific conferences, we're challenging ourselves to put some to the test as we go forth to Calgary to attend the International Society of Biomechanics conference at the end of the month. So, Melissa, what tips do you think you're going to try out at the conference?
Yeah, that's a good question. There were a lot of tips that I think I'll try to incorporate. But there are two that really stood out to me as kind of challenging. The first is I'm going to email someone beforehand to meet for coffee. So I'm going to email a professor whose work I'm really interested in and see if we can find a time to meet for coffee. Actually, spoiler alert, I already did this. And she immediately replied and was like, yeah, that sounds great. How about this time? And here's my phone number to send me a reminder. And I'm really, really excited. So I got all worked up for nothing. Maybe I'll try to schedule something with another person too. And then the second challenge I'm going to work on is asking a question at a session. So I haven't actually had the courage to stand up during a session and ask a question before. So that is my challenge to myself.
Those are awesome, and I think that I'm excited to see you kind of push your boundaries and really get at it. So
thank you.
Good job.
What are you going to challenge yourself with?
So one of the things that I feel like resounded in all of the different people's interviews that we just talked to was about planning which sessions you actually want to go to at a conference so that you don't just get there and feel overwhelmed because you can't attend everything and sort of just going in and not getting the most you can out of the conference, which I think is something that I have maybe done in the past or just not been as intentional about. So I'd like to really get the booklet, plan out which sessions I want to go to, and also try to meet new people at the different sessions and figure out where maybe my threshold is for going to talks and meeting new people and find that balance so that I can be a little bit more reflective and intentional about that in the future. And then kind of going hand in hand with that, I would like to sort of perfect my elevator pitch so that when I do meet new people, I have something cohesive to say about who I am and can really just start the conversation on the right foot.
Yeah, we can practice our elevator pitches together.
Should we go in an elevator?
Yeah, we'll go in an elevator and practice
and see if we
pitching.
can do it. The elevator that we have right outside this room is only 3 floors, so we'll have to we can try different ones, ones that take 3 floors, ones that take 1 floor.
Yeah, you're only traveling 1 floor. What do you do?
What do you do? Or maybe I'll just pull an elf and just press all the buttons in the elevator. So people can't
stop. Yeah, no cheating on your elevator pitches. Yeah, well, I really enjoyed talking to all these people. I will say, from my experiences at ISB, everyone there has been super welcoming. And so if you're new to the conference, all I would say is just really just talk to people. Tell them it's your first time at a conference and ask them what they're most excited about, or ask them what they like the most about the conferences, or if there's something that you should go check out. And continue to talk to people about your research, and be brave when you talk about your research and what you're working on. I've gotten some really good feedback from people at conferences, just in like casual situations, just kind of talking about what you're interested in and what you're working on. Yeah.
Thanks, Melissa. That's great advice.
Yeah, sure. And come find us at the conference. So Boom has a table. What am I saying? Boom has a table by the ISB and the ASB tables, which I think are by registration. And we have some fun activities for students, for everyone, just to help us be more connected, help us step out of our comfort zones and talk to people that we may not talk to otherwise, and just building our network and support system at ISB. So,
yeah. And we're really excited to meet all of you. We were just looking at some of our Boom analytics, and it looks like we've got lots of listeners all over the world. So we're really excited to connect with you at the conference.
Yeah.
Exciting news.
Biomechanics on Our Minds is now on Twitter, so you can follow us at Biomechanics OOM. Boom was too short, and Biomechanics on Our Minds was too long, so that's what we're going with. And we'll be tweeting out current episodes, tidbits from different episodes, and hoping to start some fun conversations about not just biomechanics, but about science in general, and how we can
give you guys the best podcast that has content that you want to hear.
Yes. See you in Calgary.
Thanks for joining us today on our episode of Boom. If you'd like to reach out with a research fail, any comments, questions, or suggestions for how to make Boom better, please contact us at biomechanicsonOurminds@gmail.com.
And you can follow the International Society of Biomechanics on Twitter at ISBiomechanics, or on Facebook at the International Society of Biomechanics. You can also follow me personally on Twitter at MelissaBoswell_.
Or me, Hannah O'Day, at JohanPing.
And special thank you to Peter Washington for creating the music for Boom.
Biomechanics off our minds.